everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning, participants from Europe. And good evening, Dr. Yong Reom and Dr. Dennis Hart from USA. Welcome to the 2023 EEBI International Conference hosted by the East European and Balkan Institute and co-hosted by the Korean Association of Central and East European Studies. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Tae-hyun. I'm a senior researcher at the East European and Balkan Institute, Hangul University of Foreign Studies. The host of this conference, EEBI, is carrying a 6-year research project on great changes in Eastern Europe. At this conference, we invited scholars from member states of EU in Eastern Europe and candidate states Ukraine and Moldova, and the Korean scholars studying Eastern Europe to seek their views on the cultural, linguistic, and political perspectives on this issue related to EU membership. There will be 2 sessions today. The first session's topic is Voice of Ukraine for the Unity in Diversity. And Professor Hong Seok-woo at the Department of Ukraine Studies will be the moderator. The second session's topic is Unity in Diversity in case of Eastern Europe, and Dr. Dennis Hart will be the moderator. Dr. Young-rae Hong will help us with the translation of Korean and English. Before we start discussion, I'd like to introduce shortly every scholar who participated today. Professor Kim Jong-hwan at the Department of Romanian Studies is the head of our team project, Great Changes of Eastern Europe. Please welcome him. Please unmute. I think he has a technical problem. Maybe a little bit later he can a chance to speak. Professor Hong Seok-woo at the Department of Ukraine Studies. He is the moderator of session 1. Please welcome him. And Dr. Dennis Hart, former Associate Vice President of Global Engagement at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. And currently, he is founding CEO of Optimus International Educational Consulting. Please welcome him. And Dr. Young-rae Hong, Research Associate, Masonic Institute for Developing Brain, the University of Minnesota. Please welcome her. And Senior Researcher Daniela Matei, Gheorghe Jane, ICES Romanian Academy, ES Brains. Please welcome her. And Professor Dan Gabriel Symbotin at the Department of Romanian Studies, and also a senior researcher at the Gheorghe Jane, ICES Romanian Academy, ES Brains. Please welcome him. And Alina Shumanska, PhD candidate at the Seoul National University. And Professor Natalia Udrich, professor at the Kiev National University of Culture and Arts. Please welcome her. And Professor Kim Chol-min at the Department of South Slavic Studies. Please welcome him. and senior researcher Kim Shin-gyu at the East European and Balkan Institute, and Professor Kim Yong-dok at the Department of Polish. He is the dean of our faculty of East European Studies, and senior researcher Lee Sang-dong at the East European and Balkan Institute, and senior researcher Lee Ok-jin at the East European and Balkan Institute. I think we will have more participants maybe later. So I'd like to start the session 1 now. I will hand over microphone to Professor Ung So-gu.
Thank you so much for introducing me. I'm So-gu Hong from the Department of Ukrainian Studies at the Hanguk University of Foreign Studies. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Sang-han Kim, the director of the Institute of Eastern European and Balkan Studies, and also Dr. Jong-hwan Kim, the head of the project, and also Dr. Taeyeon the chief senior researcher of the institute for allowing us to organize the Ukrainian session for this conference. As the moderator today, I have a role to wrap up this session within 45 minutes. So I will try to speak as little as possible and let the presenters speak more. And let me explain how the session will go. First, I will give each presenter 5 minutes to address the most important points of their presentation. Then I will ask each presenter one short questions. After the presenter's answer, we will take questions from the audience who participate in this online conference. So for this first session, we have 3 speakers. I would like to introduce Alina Shumanska, the PhD candidate from the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the Seoul National University. Maybe Alina Shumanska, maybe you can wave hands. And also Dr. Natalia Udris, Associate Professor, the Department of Graphic Design at the Kiev National University of Culture and Arts. And also, finally, the Dr. Irina Zvir, Associate Professor, Department of Ukrainian Applied Linguistics at the Ivan Franko National University of Lviv in Ukraine. So especially, I would like to thank Dr. Udris and Dr. Irina Zvir because they participate in this conference in the middle of a war. So I really appreciate it. So according to the order of presentations, we will start with a 5-minute speech from Alina Shumanska. Okay? Yep. Oh, it's mute. Just a moment.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. So as Professor already introduced me, my name is Alina Szymanska, and I am doing my PhD at Seoul National University. So I am right now, at the moment, I'm writing my PhD thesis, and it's very focused on the middle power theory, which is relying on this network theory and is trying to explain on how middle powers try to balance against great powers by building some connections with other countries. So it's about more like about relational relational position of those countries that are in the middle. And in my paper, which I wrote specifically for this conference, I tried to show on the relational position of Ukraine between Russia and NATO after the dissolution of Soviet Union. And based on this, I was trying to show why, unlike Poland and Balkan countries, unfortunately, Ukraine didn't manage to obtain some kind of security guarantees for itself while dealing with Russia. So everybody knows that these issues with the Crimean Peninsula and the issues of separatism that were mostly Russian-backed separatism in the area of Donbass, it was pretty much started right after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and Ukraine was in a very vulnerable position. And after the dissolution of the USSR, Ukraine had some big opportunities, such as the denuclearization and giving up its nuclear weapons in terms, I mean, it was opportunity in terms that United States was involved. So it was an opportunity for Ukraine to get some kind of attention from the United States and to get some kind of security guarantees. But the security guarantees were never actually fulfilled, since United States probably saw Russia as more important player in the post-Soviet Union rather than Ukraine. So Ukraine was somehow a little bit not really recognized by the United States as very important, and that's why when Ukraine tried to require some kind of guarantees or even NATO membership, the Clinton administration just didn't pay enough attention. And probably also this part, as well as the further inconsistency of Ukraine's foreign policy, which can be shown in different foreign policies held by Kravchuk and Kuchma and Yushchenko and later Yanukovych. So this foreign policy were never consistent with one another. They didn't kept the same tradition, but were pretty much different from itself. It later on resulted in why Ukraine was left out without those security guarantees and without those NATO membership. So pretty much it's the main focus and the main idea of my paper. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for your speech. Yeah, I have a technical problem, so I couldn't respond just after your presentation. Thank you. And through your presentation, we could learn that Ukraine's geopolitical status and value are ongoing changes after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And ironically, we also found that it is Russia itself that is pushing Ukraine further and further to the west. I believe many interesting questions will be asked to Panna Alina Szymanska later. So I will expect that. And next, I would like to introduce Dr. Natalia Udris-Vorodavko. I should mention before her speech that with the help of Dr. Natalia Udris and her colleagues and students, my department, the Department of Ukrainian Studies, is currently holding an exhibition of Ukrainian wartime posters at the Gallery Vault. So I would like to thank Dr. Udris once again, and please welcome to her speech. Dr. Udris? Oh, is there Dr. Udris now?
Yes. Hello.
Oh, hello. Hi. Yep.
Hello, dear colleagues. I am Natalia, and I'm head of graphic design department of Kyiv National University of Culture and Art. All good with my voice? Okay. Thank you. My presentation, as you already saw, is about the power of visual communications in today's society, social responsibility, and international support. The visual project that surrounds us from all informational channels performs different functions. It can be entertainment, means of a person's own realizations, tool for promoting, but also it can be a voice of a problematic situations. It can be draw people's attention to problems and to need to solve them. Every day, graphic posters and illustrations appear on Ukrainian social media as a reaction to the event of the war. They are instantly shared by thousands of followers. This is one of the factors to the sense of unity. Thanks to such visual content, we can cry together all tragedies, support the victims, rejoice in victories, and inspire each other. It should be understood that the works created by the graphic designers and illustrators um, is not just documentary photos about the war. It is a certain visual code thought out in terms of composition, color, and characters images. Each of these codes carries an unique emotion and evokes a certain emotion in response. Emotion is the beginning of motivation to act and solve a problem. My presentation shows the largest projects of Ukrainian graphic designers and illustrators, which are implemented mainly abroad. The task of these projects is to constantly remind the world that there is a war in Ukraine, that another country wants to destroy it. The activities of the graphic design department of our university are very important in this movement. The Creative Resistance Community was formed on March 3, 2022, a week after an invasion began. It includes the most active students, graduates, and teachers. One of our graduates in here conference, Dmitro Rimko, and thank you. This is the UNIQ project that has no analog in Ukraine. At first, there were about 300 members, and today there are 411. Not all of them are equally active. However, they support each other. The organizers of activities are three main teachers, me, Andrei Budnik, and Oksana Chueva, and 4-5 teachers also participate from time to time. The teachers do all the organizational work in our free time after main job, and we partially involve students from time to time. For example, under my supervision, the students made a catalog of all posters, and we sent it for our friends in all world. International support and assistance in the development of this project is very strong. We have had 40 exhibitions, 12 in Ukraine and the rest abroad. In Ukraine, a few other countries, the costs were covered by the university and the teachers themselves, but in most other countries it was the organizers themselves. And they financed, printed, post, and created the exhibition. We are very grateful for everyone, and today I would like to thank Professor Soguhong. What are our future plans? We continue to function. Some students graduate from the university, but others enter. We find new relevant topics that are important for the internal space in Ukraine. For example, about ecology problems as a result of war. We also continue to establish contacts with foreign partners who want to do an important job and organize our exhibitions to remind the world that the war in Ukraine is not over. Each of you, my friends and colleagues, also become our partner and friend in this movement. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for your speech. I would like to encourage audiences who are in Korea, please come to the Ukrainian War Poster Exhibition, which is currently being held at the Gallery Bart, located on the 5th floor of Lotte Mall in Suji. So if you look at the posters, you will be able to better understand the political messages and information that Ukrainian people are trying to convey through the posters. So I really encourage you to visit there. Thank you very much. Yeah. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Irina Zbir. Professor Irina Zbir was with us in Korea until the outbreak of war. Now she's in Poland and she still helps us. So please welcome Professor Irina Zbir. I'm sorry, probably Dr. Irina Zbir cannot unmute by herself. So in the meantime, maybe somebody help her to do that. And also let us just go on the session. So maybe I can ask the first question to the Panna Alina Shumanska first. Then maybe we can come back to Dr. Irina Zbir. Maybe it is better. Okay, is it okay, Dr. Irina Zbir? Okay. So as we planned, let me give a first question to Alina Shumanska. If you're another paper you published last year, you pointed out that Ukraine, as a middle power, had limitations in implementing a hedging strategy between Europe and Russia. In particular, in terms of security, Ukraine failed to achieve NATO membership or the US-Ukraine military alliance, requested in return for giving up its nuclear weapons. And as a result, it completely failed. Ukraine completely failed in its security policy toward Russia. So as you mentioned, after the Russian invasion in 2022, Ukraine's geopolitical position and values have completely changed. Then what kind of hedging strategy should Ukraine implement in the confrontational situation between Russia and West? Is there a way for Ukraine to take the initiative to overcome this confrontational situation and bring about a balance of power? If you answer the questions, I will really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hon, for your very interesting question. So first of all, let me explain to our other listeners and participants of this conference about the hedging strategy. So basically, in international relations, hedging is a special kind of strategy when the country that is under security dilemma is trying to cooperate in economic terms with the threatening country, while also balance against the threatening country in terms of military and defense. So the very example of hedging strategy is the example of South Korea-Chinese relations. So for instance, China and South Korea are very good in terms of economic cooperation. They are really cooperating. But on the other hand, South Korea is in military alliance with the United States and is basically balancing against China, not cooperating with China in terms of defense, and even condemning China on points such as South China Sea problems and so on and so forth. So I think that Dr. Hon here was talking my previous paper that pointed out that Ukraine's hedging strategy, especially during Kuchma administration, when Ukraine was trying to keep good terms with NATO and signing the NATO-Ukraine Charter in 1997, while also improving economic relationship with Russia, failed. And I think that Dr. Hon is asking why it failed and how Ukraine should do this hedging in future when the war finishes. So first of all, let me start with the second point of question when Dr. Hon asked, so how Ukraine should position itself as a middle power in future when the war between Ukraine and Russia finishes. So basically, since the war already began, there is no point for Ukraine to do this hedging anymore. because the relationship between Ukraine and Russia are totally dissolved. They are non-existent at this time. So there is no point to appease Russia anymore. The only thing that Ukraine needs to do in the future is to win the war and to enter NATO and to become an official NATO member. It will be the only way to protect itself in the near future. And I think that the Ukraine-Russia relations will no more be restored in future until Ukraine will get this reparations for the war and the parts that were taken by Russian army back, the land parts of Ukraine. So going back to the second point, so basically why Ukraine's hedging strategy failed in past and why it led to the war, and what Ukraine could do to be more protected. So I think that we should look at Poland, at the example of Poland in this way. So basically in 1990s, when Ukraine was trying to be in the middle of United States and Russia to balance both of them and to get some kind of point where Russia was not able to be aggressive towards Ukraine and United States would be more friendly towards Ukraine. So when Ukraine was balancing in the middle of these two big scales, I think it was more important to find another leverage. And Poland was actually very smart in finding this another leverage. So Poland is very famous for doing these unilateral regional cooperations, such like Three Seas Initiative, or for example, the Visegrad Group. I think that many of you know about this. So this kind of cooperations with smaller countries, not this big power group, but smaller countries, cooperations in defense terms, in terms of military cooperation and defense cooperation, when small countries who share the same defense issue, the same security dilemma, they get together to cooperate and to hedge against Russia, for example, or I don't know, against other power that are threatening them. So Poland was very smart in doing that, and in 1991, if I'm not mistaken, Poland created this Visegrad Group, right, with Hungary, Czechoslovakia at that time, but later it became Czech and Slovakia. So this unilateral cooperation really proved Poland and helped Poland to secure itself, right, from Russia, while Poland was not a part of NATO. And also, even while being in NATO, Poland is trying to create this Three Seas Initiative, which is a grouping of 16 countries that in past were the part of Warsaw Pact. All of them are afraid of communism and afraid of Russian imperialistic cravings, and they do very good in terms of defense cooperation, as well in terms of geopolitical cooperation and economic cooperation. So I think that what Ukraine could do in the past was actually try to find those like-minded countries that would group with Ukraine and try to protect both Ukraine and themselves from Russia's kind of expansionism. And actually, Ukraine had a very good opportunity by creating a GUAM, which is Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, and Azerbaijan cooperation. But unfortunately, it didn't prove to be very successful. I don't know why. Maybe something was going badly in terms of diplomatic, I don't know, channels. So we should ask Ukrainian diplomats what happened at that time, why Guam didn't succeed. Maybe they did something wrong. Maybe they didn't position Ukraine very well. So we should ask those people in in the ministry, right? What happened? Why Poland succeeded but Ukraine didn't? But I mean, maybe this regional cooperation actually could help if Ukrainian diplomats were more skillful. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for your answer. It is a difficult question to answer briefly, but you answered it very well. And also, we have many specialists in Polish studies. So later on, I'm sure the audience will ask additional questions. Thank you very much. Now, let me ask a question to Dr. Natalia Udris. Historically, there was a period when posters were actively made in Ukraine. So numerous posters were produced during the Soviet period and 2014 Euromaidan revolution. So I'm wondering if the Ukrainian wartime posters created from 2022 have any characteristics or tendencies that distinguish them from those of Soviet period or the Euromaidan revolution period. If you answer the questions, I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. It's very interesting and important questions. The posters of Euromaidan period and full-scale invasion are radically different from those of the Soviet era. First, there is the goal of their creation. Before, in the time of our colonization by Soviet Empire, the goal was to show that Ukraine is part of this empire. And a submission a little sister without own history and statehood. Contemporary postures, on the contrary, demonstrate our independent and great historical and cultural heritage of our country. Second, the sign and symbolic system of images. Modern posters shows the Ukrainians of 21 centuries in front of modern buildings and our achievements. Some attributes of traditional culture may look similar at first look, only at first look, but they have different meanings and contexts. For example, a Ukrainian woman in folk clothes in Soviet posters is a symbol of tradition, romantic, with some passivity, as a person, an outdated lifestyle, maybe not active and a person of second roles. But now, the woman in folk clothes is a symbol of freedom, of bravery, and our independence. Also, a field of yellow red under the sky blue. In Soviet posters, it's more symbols of agriculture and maybe without modern technology. But now it's field and blue sky is a symbol of our love to our land, our love to our land, and pride that this land is independent. The postures of the period of full-scale invasion are similar to the postures of Euromaidan period, but they are more tragic and dramatic, and they have new symbols of war, of time of war, which we didn't know before. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for your answer. And probably it will very help to our students to understand the posters. Actually, in this semester, I studied about Ukrainian wartime posters with my students. So it will be very helpful for them. Now, thank you so much. And I'm wondering if Dr. Irina Zabir is here. She told me she is rebooting her computer, but I think it will take time. So let us then get the questions from audience for the first and second the presentation. So is there anyone who wanna ask questions to Dr. Udris and the Panna Szymanska? So you can feel free to ask questions to them. Maybe you can, oh, sure. Mr. Dan Simboshtin. Yep. Yeah, you can ask a question.
Yeah. Hello to everybody. I listened very carefully that conference, and it's very, very interesting. But at the same time, I think it's focused too much to internal aspects. Everything happened in Ukraine. It is an international context, a very thin line between Poland and Ukraine is established by relation between United States, NATO, and Russia. And also, before this war, the relation between Russia and NATO was very, very close. And Russia was a very strong partner for Europe. So it's not enough to look inside. It's very, very important to look also outside to see what really happened in this kind of negotiation and really happened with Ukraine. Because I don't think Ukraine has the situation of Poland. Never Ukraine has the situation of Poland. It's a different status and a different situation. Okay, thank you. That is.
Oh, thank you so much for your comment. I think it is not the question, but it's your opinions and impression for this conference. Is it right? Yeah. Okay. And thank you so much for the comment. And is there any other questions? Okay. Maybe in the meantime, let me check if Dr. Irina Zavir is here.
I have a question to ask.
Sure. Yes.
Hi, I'm Eunjian, studying at Korean department in Korea. First of all, before I ask my question, thank you for this conference. It was very interesting to hear various thoughts. I have a question to Natalia Udres, professor. As I was getting ready Korean war poster exhibition in Korea with Professor Hong, I understand it was not easy to prepare to step by step. So when I saw the paper that you wrote, which says 33% of students were forced to leave temporarily abroad due to war, I was wondering how you guys managed to collect posters from the students who are far away.
Sorry, maybe you can repeat first part of your question.
So as I was reading your paper, it says that 33% of your students were forced to temporarily leave abroad due to war. And I was wondering how you guys managed to collect posters from the students who are far away.
Our students, not all in our country, and because we have because they have a difficult situation for study, and but we continue to speak and to our cooperants online, and our learning, our study in university also in online form. So we all time to connect and продовжуємо наше спілкування. And our work is not stopped. Every day we meet online on our study, on our topics, and and such we can continue our project.
Yeah, thank you very much for your answer. Do you still have something to tell, Dr. Udris? Yeah, 33% of students should leave Ukraine and living in Poland and other countries. And because we are living in fourth revolution digital area, so they still communicate with the people through internet. Is that right? So they can produce and create their posters and send to Kyiv, and then you can print them out and post post them on a gallery or maybe distribute through internet, I think. So I think that's what Ms. An Nji asked Dr. Udris, and I think she answered the question. So do you have any comments to make, Dr. Natalia Udris more? That's it? Okay. Okay, so yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, you can talk now. Right now.
Okay, can you hear me right now?
Yeah, no. I can hear you.
I would like to make a small comment to Professor Dan Simbutin's speaking. So yes, actually, when you told that Poland and Ukraine had little bit different strategic situations and geopolitical situations, it's pretty much true, but still in political, especially in comparative politics, we usually try to compare Poland and Ukraine for the two reasons. So first of all, both of them were the Warsaw Pact countries. And second one is that both of them are somehow related to security dilemma. And maybe Poland is even more related because Poland doesn't only it's not only located close to Russia, it's not only borders with Russia, but it also has pretty much big threatening part from Germany, since Germany, sometimes it's nice, like especially since the unification of Germany, right? But before the unification, Germany was never that nice to Poland. And in these terms, we can say that both Poland and both Ukraine, they are located in the very strange area where both of them are under the security dilemma, and both of them are middle powers, and both of them are also the post-Soviet countries, right? So based on this ways we can make put them into the same thesis and try to compare their foreign politics and after the Soviet Union, right, since the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So you totally rightfully said that Russia and NATO had a very close relations in 1990s, and that's why United States and Clinton administration totally dismissed Ukraine's urges to get into NATO. That's because Russia and NATO, as well as United States and Russia, were very close, and they never took Ukraine for serious, as well as they never took Baltic states for serious, and they never took Poland for serious in 1990s. So what I am trying to say is that Poland was more successful because, you know, in Korea we have a very good saying that when the two whales are fighting and you put a shrimp in the middle of them, the shrimp eventually will burst into small little pieces, right? So Poland was not the only shrimp between the two whales, but Poland get these other countries like Croatia, like Slovakia, like Czech, and it were like many shrimps all together, right? So it was the big number of shrimps put in the two whales, and eventually they didn't burst. So this mind of unilateralism, of regional cooperation, actually helped Poland out of the security dilemma, but Ukraine didn't manage to do that for some reason, right? And maybe that was the main reason why Ukraine couldn't secure itself, while Poland managed to do that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for your comments. Yeah, and Do we still have questions for our presenters? We still have several minutes, so please, you can raise the hands.
Yes, I think it's a very long debate about this problem and strategical global strategies and every task are very, very important in this situation. I don't want to cover this big debate here, but from historical point of view, there was a lot of situation when small countries reunited but really never succeed. We have one good example with Romania. It's called Little Attent, was created in 1920, 1921, around here, and was a collaboration between ex-Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, and Romania. And they could not do it anything when Germany invited Czechoslovakia in 38. Even these three countries look to be very, very strong. So there are a lot of examples when this small country didn't succeed to protect themselves in this global situation, like what happened now in Ukraine. Okay.
Thank you. Yep. Please tell Alina Szymanska.
I can't unmute myself again. Can you please help me?
Oh, we can hear you.
We can hear now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, that's really a very interesting comment, and I really enjoy the comments of Dr. Simbotin today. Thank you very much for interacting with me. At the same time, I think maybe the problem of why at 1920s those regional cooperation didn't succeed was because it was a very different time. It was a time when the political realism was prevailing and when everyone and every country was trying to act from the point of view of military force and like power, right? It was the time of power politics. But we must remember that Dr. Francis Fukuyama, after the end of the Soviet Union, he proclaimed the end of history. He said that there will be no more wars, there will be economic cooperation, and there will be the rule of international law and international organizations, right? And his book, The End of History, was like such a big boom. And actually, before this Ukraine-Russian war, everyone was thinking that we are living not in political realism, but in liberalism, where the rule of law is prevailing and where international organizations like NATO are prevailing, right? And I mean that during this time of this short 30 years of peace and stability and the rule of international law, of this liberalism, maybe it was the small window where actually this small regional cooperation could be validated and could succeed. So Poland took this advantage of this small peace time and Ukraine didn't. And that's why, I mean, it's my main argument. That's why probably Ukraine diplomacy was not that very successful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for your answer. And also we have one more question, Dr. Villarreal.
Viorel Kiritsa.
Oh, sorry for
my my microphone. I hope you hear.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Yes. Unfortunately, the schedule, as I wrote, the schedule of the conference is not according with the first program established. So I tried to not to present my paper, my issue, but just to remind the situation according to the presentation of the issue, the article from Alina Szymanska and others from Ukraine. So the real position in Europe is rather important, considering the geopolitical and strategical dimension of the problem. We have to take in consideration, for example, just two things. First of all, Romania, for example, is considered from most of mass media the part of Eastern Europe. In fact, is in the Central Europe, because Europe as a continent is starting to Atlantic Ocean till the Ural Mountains. So we are in the middle of the Europe, in the central of Europe. And the second one is the border of European Union is in Romania and also in Poland now. So from this point of view, between these two areas, from the Central and Western Europe and others from the Eastern Europe, and the geopolitical consideration of this position is rather important to take into account when we establish some real dimension of relations between Russian, for example, Russian Federation and European Union, NATO. But in fact, also we have in take considerations that Professor Sambutin said before, small countries has a very important and strategical position in Europe in this consideration of strategical one, because small countries as dimension, but in a very important strategical position just at the border of Black Sea, just at the border of Carpathians, just at the border of Eastern Europe, have a real dimension in this participation of European peace now affected by war. Thank you very much. Just to take in consideration every time when you discuss strategic and geopolitical position, a geographical one, a human one, a multicultural one, and so on. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for your comments. Yeah, because of the time limit, I think we cannot continue this discussion. So maybe we can talk about these topics maybe later on in other these sessions. So, but in a short time, I think it was confirmed that Ukraine's security and peace are very closely related to those of Europe. So unity in diversity also seems more important than ever, not only in Ukraine, but also in European Union. So I would like to end this session by wishing for an end to the war as soon as possible, and peace in Ukraine. So I believe all the participants gathered here share the same thought as me. So I wish peace in Ukraine. So I would like to say the Slava Ukraini and Herion Slava. So let us finish here. And thank you so much for participating this session. And please take a mic from me to Dr. Om.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Hong, for the session 1. And because we don't have pretty much time, we are going directly to session 2. Please take my microphone, Dr. Dennis Hart.
Now can you hear me? Very good, very good. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Dr. Ohm, for inviting me here. I have been asked to make some comments and such, and that I would begin with saying that, like Dr. Home, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. But unlike Dr. Home, I've been asked to do this session a little bit differently. This session has many more papers involved, so the structure that we're going to follow will be slightly different than what Dr. Hong did. First, I've been asked to make a few comments to kind of bring the papers together because they cover many different fields in many different countries and many different topics. And I will do so using my research framework, which is national identity. Beyond that, what we'll do then is go directly to the authors of the papers, the scholars, and go through sequence. And for each one, I will open the floor for questions for that particular scholar's paper. Then, after we finish all the scholars, we all get a turn to ask questions, then I will open the floor to everybody in general. So that's the structure that I'll be following here. So with that, it is an honor and a privilege to participate in this conference. Thank you very much for having me here. As I read the papers, about 9 of them, I was deeply impressed by both the scholarship and the complexities that are faced by the diverse peoples in Eastern Europe. The papers tell an important story of many people with different languages, different cultures, different histories, different religions, different identities, senses of who they are, even though they all come from what is called Eastern Europe. These people have lived next to each other for centuries, yet there are great diversity is their unity, which is what we're approaching in this conference. What is also clear is that while each one of these people define their national identity in themselves through distinctive histories, they have national identities that are both rooted in the past, but have also changed and are evolving. Paper after paper spoke to the idea that how people are defining themselves as Romanians, Moldovans, Polish are different than what it used to be before. In brief, this conference and its presenters are witnesses to a very dramatic time, one of the most dramatic times in Eastern Europe, a time when people are compelled to alter their own identities, not simply as pawns or artifacts of history and large forces, but rather as agents who wish to control their present and to control their future. It's quite common belief for many people that national identity is a natural state, that it is eternal, that history reaches to the past and into the present, that simply said that we are who we are as a country because we've always been that way. But this conference shows that that is flawed. That is not a good way to understand identity, because what we see here through these papers with the idea of contestation of who we are, who we have been, dealing with the past in a way that washes part of it away. What we see is a complex process of self-construction that contends and deals with a larger current reality. The papers demonstrated to me that national identity is malleable and negotiated. It is not permanent. It is not static. It is not stagnant, but rather it is dynamic, just as the people who live it. Borders change. So do the identities of the people. It changes in response to the times, conditions, and dreams of these people. Further, as the papers show, national identity is not unified. It is not the same for everybody. The people in Romania, the people in Poland, the people in Hungary, not all of them have the same way of saying, I am Hungarian. Not all of them define I am Romanian in the same way. There is contestation. There are battles and arguments going on. But the conference title is Unity Through Diversity. It's a wonderful title. It captures the need for the people in Eastern Europe to both live their past, but to forge new futures. National identities in Eastern Europe historically separated people. Now this conference is saying that is it possible for these emerging national identities to bring people together? Because change is painful, especially at this level. How are the people in Eastern Europe, all the different countries, to keep their traditions, but simultaneously remove their memories of when they were communist? Many of these people grew up under the shadow, under the heavy hand of the Russian imperialist occupations. As Jews, they viewed themselves as communists. Now they must wash that part of their history away. They must wash that part of their identity away and create something to replace it. A key theme in many papers was how to reconcile the differences, past, present, and within the nation, to create a new national identity. The language situations in Romania and Moldova. The religion situation in Bosnia was a wonderful paper talking about diversity on religion in that country. One of the concepts that was brought up in the paper was the idea that as an approach for Eastern Europe not to be separate, but to be unified in some level with all their differences is to introduce respect, not toleration, not just saying that we will not kill you today, but rather we respect who you are and who you choose to be. National identity also for Eastern Europe is not simply Romanians for Romanians, Poles for Poles, Ukrainians for Ukrainians. It is how you represent yourself to the world. Increasingly in the paper, many people in Eastern Europe are changing their identity. They're dropping the Eastern. What they're seeking is not to be Eastern Europeans. What I saw was they want to be Europeans. That's a dramatic change. Is that to be the source of the unity, that we are all Europeans and not what we used to be? There is a shift going on in their consciousness. Language is a struggle, history, cultures, as we saw in Moldova. What is Moldovan language? What is Romanian language? Who can tell the difference at times? What do we do with the Russians? That's the Russian language that is embedded in Moldova. How do you handle that as you move forward to a new identity? So the unity mentioned in this conference in its title represents a formidable challenge. Even with the current nations of Eastern Europe, there is no single voice for Eastern Europe or even for the countries themselves. So how is unity to be achieved? How is unity even within countries to be achieved? So these excellent points, these wonderful papers left me with a question, which is, how will the people who make up these diverse and disparate areas, which now are known as Eastern Europe, how will they come to grips and how will they define the concept of unity for themselves? So this was a wonderful conference. The entire conferences over these 6 years have been great at looking at changes. So with that, that's how I saw these papers. And I'd like to delve more by having the authors address questions into them. As I said, we'll begin paper by paper, and I will introduce the title and the author, but then I will immediately open up the floor to questions from everybody. And just raise your hand, either your real hand or your cartoon hand. Either one works, but just raise your hand and then you can ask your question to the author. So with that, let us begin. The first paper is Multiculturalism and the Regional Dimension of Romania's European Integration by Viorel Curiciu. So with that, I open up the floor for anybody who wishes to ask a question up to Dr. Curiciu.
Dr. Denisart, I think Professor Viorel Chiriță is left. So there is no one to answer the question. So it's better to move next presentation.
Yes, good idea. The second presentation that I'll look at is an outlook of being Romanian in the European Union, mentalities and epistemic limits of communications by Dr. Simbotin. And I know he is here because I saw him speak a little bit earlier. So please, if you have questions for Dr. Simbotin, please pose them now. Not be shy. Ask a question.
To accede to the Schengen, the consent of all the member states is required. and Romania was rejected for clear reasons. What are the main reasons some countries are against the accession of Romania?
Thank you for this question. Yes, it's a very big problem now in Romania, but we hope not for a long time, because we wanted to be in Schengen from, I think, 2011, and we had all criteria, everything was all right. But from political reason, we just rejected again and again and again. This year was a little bit more strange because 1 month ago, 1 month before the final decision, every country in Europe was agreed with the Romanian idea to be part of, with idea Romanian to be part of the Schengen. But from national reason, and this is a very important aspect, from national reason, Austria rejected us again, refused us again to be part of Schengen. And here it's a balance of power. To be part of European Union, it's a big power and also a big responsibility. It's a big power because every country has the right of veto. And this big power means also a very big responsibility, because this right could block everything inside European Union from a subjective point of view. And this is a big problem here, and this is look forward for this kind of responsibility. We Romanian, but not only we Romanian, every country from European Union wanted to find this responsibility in the other countries. So we wanted to be considered equal, and every country when had a decision to be one decision well thinking and in interest for everyone, not just for themselves.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Dr. Shimbutin? Then, as moderator, I will exercise my power. And if it is all right with you, Dr. Shimbutin, may I ask you a question? Because I really enjoyed reading your paper. You had a quote in there, a sentence which really made me think. And the quote, I'll read it, is, "The 45 years of communism determines habits and social types. Fear and untrusted. Political peace could be anywhere. Family, close friends, and colleagues. Independence or autonomy, or syndicates or membership in Communist Party organizations. Insubordination with communist time constraints." This is an important statement because it has to do with the memory, the inherited past that Romanians must deal with. And so my question to you is, in a practical sense, what steps or what remedies do you think the Romanian people or the Romanian government should take to help clean this part of the past, or to rehabilitate it at least in some way?
We thought the time could solve everything. But in reality, this part of our deep history and in our deep social psychology of Romanian still remains. And what could political and government leaders? I think first to develop trustful habits, and to give us the general impression everything is transparent, we have no more discrimination, the people are really equal in the front of the law, so on. So if you respect the human rights, and it's clear that human rights will be respected, in this case, this will be forgot. But we still have some small abuse, not really everywhere, but it's happened. Small habits, not really in good relation with the idea of equal of chances and equality. And these habits put it a new accent and underline our old memories.
I would imagine this is a problem for all post-Soviet societies as well as Romania. So I have seen. So thank you very much. And again, I did enjoy your paper. It was very well done. Thank you. So are there any final questions for Dr. Shimbotin before we move on? One chance. In that case, we will move on. The next paper's title was The Communist Secret Police Archives in Moldova Between East and West, the narrative about Soviet liberation and the victims of communist totalitarianism by Dr. Dumitru Liznik. So I now open the floor for any questions that anyone might have on this paper, please.
Dr. Denis Hart,
Yes.
Professor Dumitru Lisnik wasn't able to participate in the conference. Maybe he has a technical problem, so
I
we
see.
don't have it.
So I take that as a suggestion that we should move on.
Yes.
Certainly. Next in line is Unity in Diversity, a wonderful title. Unity in Diversity, the case of ex-Yugoslavia and Croatia by Dr. Kim Sang-hun. So if anybody has any questions for Dr. Kim on his paper for ex-Yugoslavia and Croatia, please raise your hand.
Yes, I do have a question for Professor Kim. First of all, thank you for the writing on the subject of unity and diversity. Western Balkan countries still have difficulty uniting minorities into one nation as a national concept, even though they have long been described as a mosaic of religion and culture. While I was listening to reading to the presentation, I thought that there would be difficulties in solving the problem until Serbia and Croatia work together. Therefore, I wonder if there is a solution that the two countries are currently cooperating with, or if not, what hinders it?
Dr. Kim Sang-hun, is he here?
I think he's also left.
In that case, we can move on. But thank you for your question, by the way. Okay, I appreciate it. Was a good question because I read the paper and I had actually the same question myself. So unfortunately, we cannot get an answer, but it was a good one. So thank you. Next, we have the title of the paper is A Mosaic of Religion and Culture, Bosnia, focused on historical factors by Kim Chul Min. So please, if you would ask any questions on this paper to Dr. Kim Chol-min, that would be welcomed, please. Questions? Dr. Simbotin.
I have historical curiosity. Its entire Balkanic peninsula was conquered by Ottoman Empire. And my question is how this part of Balkanic remains Islamic and the other part change their religion and what really happened after to the beginning of 20th century for being like this?
Okay, I at first I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kim Chol-min. My major was the international history of the Central and Eastern Europe. Especially, my major was focused on the international national dispute and the national conflict on the Balkan Peninsula. So, as you know, is that after the Bosnia War, is the many scholars and many people's interested on the Bosnia history of the Bosnia. As you have a question is the why Bosnia Muslim is located in the Europe. So for that understand this question is the I explained it in this paper. On a paper I explained it is the why is the called mosaic of religion of the and culture of Bosnia, especially focused on the historical factors with two historical factors. The first historical factors was the Bosnia was located on the divide line between Eastern and Western Rome, and between when Rome Church and as you know is the Rome Church is became the Catholic. And the Constantinople Church also became the Orthodox Church. And the second historical factor was the after that Bosnia was occupied by Ottoman Turkey from the 14th century to the 19th century, after the Berlin Treaty. Bosnia came under the influence of the Islamic culture. As a result, the Balkans have been a very complicated distribution of religion and culture, especially Bosnian Muslim Bosniak is believes the Islam and Serbians Serbian Orthodox, and Croatians is Catholic. So, with these historical factors, I have attention to the other factors. I'm sorry that is the as the you know is that this paper is so shortly, so I cannot explain this point. Three factors, historical factors, especially as the you know is the after that 19th century, especially after they occupied by the Austria. Austria wanted to make a Bosnia is like as the basement of the eastern Balkan Peninsula for that expanded its territory. So at first, Austria, as you know, is the Austria believes the Catholic state. In spite of that, Austria they controlled they wanted to control the Bosnian Muslim. Bosnian Muslim were the leaders during the 500 years. So just they wanted to Bosnian Muslim is the control the Bosnian Christianity. So the other area of the Balkan Peninsula, Balkan states, for example, Bulgaria and Serbia and Romania, they were cleaned Muslim, in spite of in Bosnia can use the prolong is each priority and each power Bosnian Muslim in Bosnia. So like as that is the three historical factors can be relieved Bosnian Muslim and had his power and its national identity in the Europe. Thank you for question.
Thank you very much for that answer. I appreciate it. And your paper was very interesting with the concept of representative mosaic region. And I was wondering about how it would play out. So thank you very much. I appreciate that, Professor Kim. So the final paper not final, but the next paper that we have is titled Changes in Polish Society After Accession to the EU. The author is Professor Kim Yong-duk. So, if you have any questions for Professor Kim on changes in Polish society after accession to the EU, now is an opportunity to ask him. The floor is open.
Dr. Dennis Hart, I'm sorry, but Professor Kim Yong-duk also left the conference, so move on.
Not
Next.
a problem. Not a problem. Now we get to the ultimate, the final one, which is quiche culture in Hungary, from fictitious subjectivity to cultural self-identity by Professor Lee Sang-dong. So please, if you have questions for Professor Lee about quiche culture in Hungary, now is the time to ask them. The floor is open for questions.
I have a question.
Please.
In your paper and presentation, you said that disguising the real as fake in the 21st century is called kitsch. Then what kind of changes and environments has it undergone since 1989 when kitsch culture began to gain popularity again in Hungary or after joining the European Union? And what are the main factors for how is the kitsch culture developing and changing the spirit of the times by public consumption in Hungary after joining the EU?
네, 감사합니다. I need an interpreter for my answer. When it comes to my English, I think my English is rusty. 네. 우선 그 끼치는 사전적으로 정의가 굉장히 힘든 그런 가변적인 키워드라고 말씀드릴 수 있습니다. 물론 이제 보는 각도에 따라서, 보는 시각에 따라서 그 해석을 좀 달리할 수 있는데, 그렇다고 해서 뭐 끼치라는 단어가 쓰여 있다고 해서 꼭 긍정적이냐, 부정적이냐 이런 평가를 할 수는 없지만, 아무튼 뭐 일부에서는 그런 의견도 있습니다. 끼치를 뭐 예술을 끌어올리는 것인지 아니면 끼치가 어떤 예술의 수준을 끌어내리는 것인지 이런 논의가 있긴 한데, 아무튼 1989년도 이후 그다음에 유럽 가입 이후에 유럽연합 가입 이후에 어떤 그런 시대적인 변화와 함께 헝가리 사회에서의 끼치 문화의 그런 변화의 요인에 대해서 대략 한 4가지 정도로 답변을 좀 드리고 싶습니다. 통역 가능하신가요?
네,
Dr. Ong, yes.
말씀하세요. 네.
네. 1989년 이후에 헝가리가 체제 전환하고 유럽연합 가입하고 나서 그런 시대적인 변화와 더불어서 헝가리 사회에서의 끼치 문화는 한 4가지 정도의 주요 요인이 있다라고 이렇게 설명드릴 수 있겠습니다. 네, 이거 번역해 주시면, 통역해 주시면 그 다음
예.
하겠습니다.
The
Yes, if you would,
concept of
Dr. Ong, translate.
Okay, the concept of kitsch is hard to define. It's a nebulous concept. It's not, it's kind of controversial. Depending on the position, it can be negative or positive. And Dr. Lee believes that there are 4 different types of impact of kitsch or aspect of kitsch culture in Hungary after Hungary joined in EU.
네. 종종 끼치는 과거의 재현이냐 아니면 이제 비판적인 그런 정치적인 심상을 담고 있다라고 이렇게 얘기가 많이 되는데
예,
헝가리 사회의 일부에서는 이런 표현을 통해서 어떤 당시의 정치적인 현실을 비판하거나 그런 것들을 탐험하기 시작을 했었습니다.
예. So the kitsch is a form of a representation of politics, and it could take a form of a political critique.
1989년 이후 헝가리가 이제 공산주의 체제가 붕괴되고 이제 그런 걸로 인해서 민주주의 또는 시장 경제의 전환 이런 것을 통해서 문화적인 자유가 이렇게 확장이 됩니다.
In Hungary, after 1989, with the collapse of communism and the transition into the capitalism, that the freedom of artistic expression has been expanded in Hungary.
이거는 이제 무슨 의미냐면 서양 문화와 글로벌 흐름에 그만큼 헝가리가 더 많이 노출이 되게 되었다는 의미고 그로 인해서 서구의 다양한 스타일 그런 것들을 통한 어떤 그 예술 활동을 할 수 있는 단지 꼭 예술만은 아니지만 일반 산업 문화 예술 쪽에서의 그런 영감을 수용할 수 있는 그런 환경이 이제 조성이 됩니다.
Which, in other words, Hungary was exposed to Western cultures and global cultures. Also, the Western culture, culturally and industrially, Hungary has found the space to express the culture.
네. 그래서 이제 헝가리 사람들이 새로운 어떤 소비 문화에 대해서 더 열광하게 되고 이 끼치 문화는 그런 헝가리 사람들이 열광하는 새로운 소비 문화의 한 부분으로서 자리를 잡게 됩니다.
Okay. So Hungarians actually welcomed and started enjoying the culture of consumption, and they started to express their desire to participate in consumption, cultural consumption as well.
예. 그리고 이제 끼치 문화는 대중문화와 굉장히 긴밀한 연관성을 갖고 있다고 말씀드릴 수 있습니다.
Culture of kitsch is very closely related to pop culture.
유럽연합 가입 이후에 헝가리에서는 그 대중매체의 영향력이 증가합니다. 특히 이 끼치 문화의 보급과 확산이 더욱 촉진되는 그런 기회를 맞이합니다.
So after the transition to the capitalist culture, the popular culture has become expanded and has expanded power, expanded influence in the society.
이 끼치는 그래서 이제 헝가리 사회에서는 텔레비전 프로그램이라든가 음악, 광고 이런 다양한 매체를 통해서 이제 헝가리 일반 대중들에게 전파가 되고 헝가리 사회에서는 이러한 문화적 현상을 즐기고 받아들이는 그런 경향이 이제 나타납니다.
Okay, so the kitsch culture has been expanded through via TV, by music or advertisement, and the pop culture as a form of pop culture. Kitsch culture has been accepted and enjoyed in Hungary.
그래서 특히 이제 유럽연합 가입 이후에 헝가리의 경제가 이제 점진적으로 성장을 하고 경제의 성장이라고 하는 것은 헝가리 일반 대중들의 구매력과 소비 문화의 확대로 이어지게 되고요. 그러한 경제 발전은 그러한 소비 문화를 더 이렇게 높이게 되면서 이 키치 작품에 대한 어떤 수요를 더 끌어올리게 됩니다.
Okay, so as Hungary joined and with EU, Hungary has grown economically, which also means that the Hungarian people have the purchasing power or the ability to consume. Their ability to consume has been increased. Okay, what was the last one? I think I missed the last one.
이런 그 경제적 발전이 소비 문화를 격려하고 그리고 키치 문화의 제품의 수요도 높였다. 네.
Okay, so economic growth means the power of consumption was expanded. Therefore, the demand for kitsch culture also has been increased.
예. 그래서 이제 21세기 헝가리는 기존의 뭐 진품이나 어떤 진정성 있는 그런 작품을 가리키는 그런 의미가 아니라 좀 저속하고 천박한으로 어떤 그런 산업 미술 작품으로 여겼던 그런 키치가 새로운 미적 기준으로 이렇게 부상을 합니다.
So in the 21st century, the traditional attitude toward the culture was that they considered the authenticity and the classic values were highly valued. But after what used to be considered vulgar, popular culture, kitsch has been more accepted since with this.
그 과거에 천박하고 저속한 그런 대중문화, 그런 예술이 아니라 최근에는 자신을 표현하는 긍정적인 측면에서 더욱 부각이 됩니다.
So what used to be considered vulgar and low culture is now actually accepted as a form of self-expression by some people.
여기 이제 젊은 학생들도 많고 대부분의 이제 교수님들, 연구자분들께서 대학에서 가르치고 계시기 때문에 물론 이제 해외에 계신 분들은 한국 그 K-팝을 잘 모르셔서 공감을 못 하시겠지만 요즘에 가장 핫한 여성 걸그룹 그 아이돌 그룹이 있습니다. 그 아이브라는 그룹이 부르는 노래 제목이 키치라는 노래가 있어서 아마 들어봤을 겁니다. 그래서 그런 걸 보면 자신만의 개성을 드러내는 사람들의 유쾌한 방식으로 이 키치 문화의 흐름이 변하고 있습니다.
In Korea, also there is a girl group called IVE who has a song titled "Kitsch." So this is an example of how kitsch is being more accepted as a form of self-expression.
제가 헝가리와 한국을 뺀 다른 나라에서는 어떤 흐름이 있는지 잘 모르지만 전반적으로 이 기성 문화를 새롭게 참신하게 다시 만들어내는 그런 사람들이 존재하는 한 아마 이런 키치 문화가 우리 생활 거의 대부분의 분야에서 계속 존재할 거라고 생각합니다.
Okay. I don't know much about kitsch culture aside from Hungarian and Korean culture, but I assume that kitsch culture as a form of new and alternative culture to the existing traditional culture, there will be always a demand for this.
네. 그래서 헝가리 사회가 아마 헝가리 사회에 어떤 새로운 가치관을 심어주고 있는 이런 키치 문화가 앞으로 헝가리 사회를 더 다양하고 개방적으로 만들 수 있을 거라는 생각을 해봅니다.
In Hungary, kitsch presents a new value, a newness, a new generation's new value Therefore, this will increase the diversity of the Hungarian culture, I believe.
네, 요 정도 답변하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Dennis Hart, please unmute. We can't hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Om. 이 교수님 이렇게 좋은 대답을 해주시니까 대단히 감사합니다. So thank you very much for your answer. I appreciate it very much. So we have one more paper and one more author, and the paper's title is Europeanization of Central and Eastern Europe, focusing on the change of diplomatic strategy of the Czech Republic. And the author is Kim Shin-gyu 교수님, or Professor Kim Shin-gyu. So please, if you have questions for Professor Kim, please ask the questions. Yes,
I
Ms.
have a
Kim.
question. Yeah, for Professor Kim. First of all, thank you for your paper. And by reading your paper, I understood that Europeanization goes from top to bottom, and at the same time, it also goes from bottom to the top. And you said that member states project their diplomatic and security priorities onto the EU, so EU would achieve them on behalf of the member states. Therefore, I'm wondering if you have any specific examples of it.
네, 저 질문 감사드립니다. 그리고 저 한국말로 하겠습니다. 엄영래 교수님이 안 계셨으면 진땀을 흘렸을 뻔했는데 통역 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
예,
네, 질문 감사하고요. 그냥 짧게 말씀드리면 그 조그만 뭐라고 할까요? 동유럽에 있는 조그만 소국들이 하지 못하는 것을 유럽 연합이 대신 해주도록 하는 어떤 그런 정책을 얘기하고 있고요. 구체적인 사례로는 그냥 두 가지만 드리겠습니다. 첫 번째는 동유럽의 에너지 안보 뭐 이제 그런 문제를 드리겠습니다. 사실 조그만 국가들이 에너지 안보를 에너지 안보가 굉장히 위태롭거든요. 그래서 지금 현재 러시아 의존도가 너무 심해서 그러니까 그 문제를 유럽 연합이 대신 해결하도록 하는 방법입니다. 그래서 유럽 연합이 새로운 러시아를 제외한 새로운 에너지 공급자를 찾아주고 그리고 석탄과 석유를 제외한 새로운 에너지 자원을 찾아주도록 하는 방식입니다. 그래서 그런 식으로 해서 중동부 유럽 국가들의 에너지 안보가 상당히 많이 높아졌고요. 첫 번째. 두 번째는 소위 EAP 정책이라고 해서 이스턴 파트너십이라는 정책을 들 수 있는데요. 러시아하고 중동부 유럽 사이에 소위 새로운 완충지를 두는 겁니다. 그래서 그 사이에 있는 완충지를 두어서 러시아로부터의 직접적인 위협을 막을 수 있고요. 또 한 가지는 그들에게 소위 유럽적인 가치, 그러니까 민주주의나 법치나 인권 같은 걸 전달해주고 또 경제적 발전을 이루게 함으로써 이 중동부 유럽 전체에서의 어떤 지역 안정성을 만들도록 하는 겁니다. 그거를 개별 국가가 못하니까 유럽연합이 이제 하도록 시켜주는 것이죠. 그래서 2009년도에 유럽연합이 유럽 인접국 정책 중에서, 그러니까 이스턴 네이버후드 폴리시 중에서 그 중에서 동유럽 정책을 아주 강화시키는 정책을 만듭니다. 그게 바로 이스턴 파트너십 정책입니다. 그러니까 이런 두 가지 사례를 통해 볼 때 조그만 국가가 못하는 것을 유럽연합이 대신하게 하는 것, 그것을 제 페이퍼에서는 아래로부터의 위로의 유럽화 혹은 업로딩 유러피아니제이션이라고 표현했습니다. 네, 교수님.
Okay. Briefly, I can think of two different examples. One was the energy security of small states in Eastern Europe, because until the war, small states in the Eastern Europe were highly dependent on Russia regarding their energy security. But with the war, EU actually stepped in and actively helped out Eastern European states to procure alternatives sources for the energy for the so that they don't have to rely on Russia. Secondly, they also helped, actively mediated so that these small states can locate alternative resources other than petroleum or, coal or petroleum. Second example is that the EU tried to create a buffer between Russia and Middle East by supporting and creating more Europeanized cultural bloc between them, between Russia and Middle East. For example, democracy or human rights, these are considered European values, and they supported institutionalizing these values in this region. Did I translate correct? Okay, these could be two good examples of how small states leveraged the EU so that their agenda of the small states could become a priority of EU as a whole. Therefore, EU basically resolved this, became a solution for these problems. Okay.
김 교수님 감사합니다. 눈물을 보고 많이 배웠습니다.
Yeah.
감사합니다. So with that, we have gone through all the papers for session 2. And what I would like to do would open up the floor for anyone to ask anyone any questions. We still have many of the authors here, so they would love to be able to tell you more about their papers. So please, any questions for any of our presenters, please raise your hand. Seeing no hands, I assume there are no questions. So with that, what I would like to do at this point is to first thank everyone. Thank all the presenters for all their papers, which were very interesting. Thank all of you for coming to the conference and participating and asking the questions that you asked. It was a very informative session, and I enjoyed listening to everybody. Now, I would also like to give thank yous. Besides thank you to you for showing up, we must all give thanks. If you would please join me in giving thanks to EEBI for sponsoring, for hosting, for making this wonderful series and this conference possible. So all the leaders and all the people of EEBI, would you please join me in thanking them for running this conference? That. Next, I would like to give particular and special thanks to Dr. Hong So-gu, who is the host and did a wonderful job of moderating the first session. Second, I would like to thank Dr. Tae-hyun, who has been working very hard for this conference. Organizing a conference is a very difficult job, Dr. Thank you for doing that. You did a wonderful job. Finally, for Dr. Young Ray, who did a wonderful job of translating on the spot difficult questions and answers. So thank you for that one that was there. But finally, I would join with Dr. Hong and give special thank you to the people, the scholars that joined us from the Ukraine. There is nothing ordinary about their time in their country going on. They are suffering through incredible tragedy and pain, as we all know. Yet, they took their time and they joined us and they shared their research and their insights. I want to let them know that we appreciate them joining us and that we all stand with them in their fight for their survival. So with that, I bring this conference to a conclusion and thank you all and wish you all a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dennis Hart. Thank you.